faculty, our normal faculty meetings in.
Right.
It looks like our student crew is still arriving, but we are officially at 7, and I want to go ahead and get ourselves started.
Right.
And it is an enormous pleasure to be introducing my colleague Chia Sakakibara this evening. I enjoy introducing all my colleagues because I'm just so crazy about what everyone in the program does, and the sort of diversity of sort of skills, interests, and approaches we take to thinking about the human relationship with the environment. And what I love about Dr. Sakakibara's work is that it is so fundamentally based on storytelling. And I actually, to be honest, Dr. Sakakibara's book that you read a section of for today is basically hot off the press. So I hadn't actually read it until tonight. And I just hope that you folks in the class enjoyed reading it as much as I did. What a beautiful story. You are just so great at storytelling. And I really appreciate that. Especially within academics, where a lot of people write a lot of boring stuff, to be perfectly honest. let's be upfront about it. So let me go ahead and introduce my colleague. So Chia actually grew up as a member of the Ryukyuan people, who are an indigenous group in Southwest Japan. And she came to the US in 1998 as an undergraduate student at the University of Oklahoma, and then stayed on there to do her PhD in their program. We were fortunate to hire Dr. Sakakibara into the environmental studies program at Oberlin in 2015 as sort of the second core faculty member focused on humanities. So you met Janet Fischio last class, who was our first humanities hire, and Chia Sakakibara our second. And we're really pleased to be sort of building out humanities as a significant and important component of our environmental studies program at Oberlin. Dr. Sakakibara has a background in Native American studies from the University of Oklahoma, a BA in British American studies from University of Japan. She has a master's in art history from the University of Oklahoma, and then, as I mentioned, a PhD in geography from the University of Oklahoma. Chia's teaching and research interests are in the fields of human dimensions of global climate change, human-animal relations, and the environmental ethics and justice among indigenous and marginalized populations. She has been deeply engaged in community-based research with the Inupiat tribe of Arctic Alaska since 2004, where she's sort of an honorary community member, I think, and I think that comes across in her book. Chia teaches our introductory environmental humanities course, a course in indigenous peoples and climate change and in indigenous environmentalism. And she's also working really closely with the East Asian Studies program at Oberlin. And she has this beautiful daughter and also a beautiful dog, which I think are both central to who she is. And I don't want to say any more about Chia because I want to turn things over to my colleague, Dr. Sakakibara. And let me make sure that you can share your screen if you're going to do that, Chia. So thank you so much for being here, Chia.
Thank you so much, Professor Peterson, for such a beautiful introduction. And thank you again for hiring me 5 years ago. It's been just non-stop joy here. Every day brings me a new sense of delight. But before getting into my lecture, let's see. Noelle just sent everybody a message. Is it all right if she could quickly speak? So Noelle, take over.
Okay. All right. Now that I was actually going to plan to do it after you spoke, but since you gratefully gave me the floor, I'll do that. I won't make this. I won't make this long. So, related to this course, I wanted to put out there that on the 25th, there's going to be a very special event online on Zoom at 2, where for anyone that's curious about the Green New Deal, because it's so mired in confusion right now, that whole terminology, there's going to be a Zoom session where we answer all your questions and confusions to put aside the demonizations that this economic package has had, so that so we can show for what it truly is, like the package that's trying to save life on Earth. And I could share my screen for like a millisecond so that you can have a visual of what this is, where you can find this. So you can find this right here, and I'll post a link of that in the chat. But that is what I want to say. Thank you so much, and I hope you join.
I will mention that event, like other events, I sent you a link, so you saw that go by, but you have a link in your emails from me to that event, to the Zoom login for that event, and that is one that you'll receive extra credit for if you participate in and mark that down on our assignment. So back to you, Chia.
Oh, great. Well, thank you, Noel, so much for sharing. Rest assured that I've already distributed this information to my groups of students. So thank you for all you do. And it's been such a delight working with you. Okay, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me outside of your regular class time. Let's try to make this meeting as productive, as meaningful as possible. I'll give it my best shot, but I just learned that Jay Fiskio came right before me, so that's a hard act to follow. Let's see what I can do. All right, so once again, my name is Chia Sakakibara. My pronouns, any pronouns, fine. I was born and raised in Japan, and as a Professor Peterson has already given you a beautiful overview of my background, I do many different things. Yeah, I've done many different things, and I'm doing many different things, and I will be doing many, many different things. One of the things I do, I'm a scholar, I'm also a mother, I'm also an adoptive member of this Inupiat community of Arctic Alaska, and I also am an indigenous person from southwestern Japan. So apparently my life has been so busy, and yet it's been just constant excitement. And what I enjoy the most at Oberlin is this proximity, nearness with students and faculty, in which I really enjoy collaborating, spending time with students, establishing reciprocal working relationship with my students. So I'm going to say this up front, that I see you, every single one of you, not just as my student, but also at the same time, I see you as my younger colleagues and collaborators who shares my passion toward environmental studies, for which we collectively explore the disciplines through many adventures, intellectual adventures. Right. So since Jay Fiskio has come and talked to you, I'm sure she's given very passionate lectures, and you took so many take-home messages with you. Let me ask you some, I don't know, difficult questions. Okay, so people, suppose I am a rebellious teenager here who has no idea what the environmental humanities entail. Yeah, try to educate me on what your take of environmental humanities is. That's question number one. And question number two, why is it so important for you to study environmental humanities within the discipline of environmental studies? I'm going to give you 30 seconds, to reflect upon yourselves, and then just put your thoughts together. And then I'm going to open up the floor for conversation and discussion. I'm Japanese. I have my clock here. I'm very punctual. So 30 seconds, I'll shut up. Okay, so very quickly, I texted everyone to recap my questions in case you didn't get them. The first question, so tell me what environmental humanities is in your own words. And the second question, why is it that it's important for you to even talk about environmental humanities within this interdisciplinary field of environmental studies? Go.
I could go.
Yeah.
Okay, so to me, environmental humanities, it's what breathes life into environmental studies in the first place, because environmental studies is supposed to be an interdisciplinary field that is supposed to conserve, or at least detain things from being depleted and just becoming extinct, not living or non-living. That's usually like a living term, but and it breathes life into it in the sense that it makes sure that the results are justly distributed, so that the inherent morality of environmental justice actually happens in the first place. Because let's say you can't have environmental justice without the inclusion of BIPOC communities and such into their plans. So that's what it means. That's what environmental humanities means to me, and obviously that's important to me. So that kind of answers the second question as well.
Great, Noel. Beautifully said. Thank you so much. I'm very proud of you. Let me just tell you this up front. So yeah, just to recap what Noel has just shared with everyone here, environmental studies is inherently an interdisciplinary field of study, which divides what's called the traditional divide between natural sciences, engineering, social sciences, and humanities, as well as a diverse body of epistemologies, be it Western, Eastern, indigenous, you name it. In so doing, what do? We're putting human faces on myriad social and environmental problems. And in so doing, what are we doing? We are fostering resiliency through interdisciplinary and intersectoral collaboration. And in so doing, let me just add one more thing to Noel, the profound statement that Noel has shared with us, is that it's a very empowering field of study. Definitely. Yeah. By adding human faces and giving voices to the group of people, BIPOC people, yeah, borrowing Noel's word here, giving words and voices to the historically underrepresented and marginalized groups of people, we're able to empower many groups of the community or the society with whom we share the environment with, and which contributes to the notion of environmental justice, which I'm sure Jay Fiskio has shared with you extensively in her presentation. So all in all, yeah, it's a very exciting field of study. I'm very honored. I feel very privileged to be in this shoes of sharing my own experience and expertise with you in environmental studies. And I'm really hoping that you will be enjoying the journey with me and Jay Fiskio exploring a variety of topics in this field of study for the rest of your time here at Oberlin, if we were to major in environmental studies. Okay, so this is great. Anybody else to add? Yeah, Emma.
I also think like it's everything that you guys have said and more, but I also think that like one of the reasons that it's so important to like understand environmental humanities is because it adds a layer of complexity to both like sort of like treating the problem, not the symptoms, and applying like appropriate methods to both understand like climate change is happening, but it's not happening the same everywhere, and it's not happening due to the actions of people equally. And it's just really important, like with environmental humanities, to like gain a lot of context of like, I'd say like sort of just, for example, like briefly saying like the like a basic thought of like just blanket environmental sciences is like, oh, you shouldn't eat meat because like meat is like not productive for the land, but like environmental humanities and stuff, you understand the nuance of like, well, there are some communities who can hunt for meat more sustainably. There are some communities where it's just what's better available to them, and it's not like persecuting people who might have like two completely different like positions in life with just the same brush. Environmental humanities really allows us to like make distinctions for the actions that need to be taken on like a case by case basis.
This is so great. Thank you so much, Emma. You can't really even imagine how grateful I am toward what you just shared with me and everybody else in the classroom. Definitely cultural sensitivity, environmental ethics, and once again, putting faces on what's happening on the surface of this planet. Definitely, these are the topics that we should always keep in our mind. And I'm not sure, you're mostly in the first year or second year, is that right? So yeah, probably you don't know my wonderful colleague, Mary Gavin yet. Yeah, but she is the, don't tell her I said this, but she's the queen of biology department here. And she's a goddess. She's definitely one of my faculty members whose work I highly worship and appreciate. And once she came to give a guest lecture in Environmental Studies 201, that's the second level environmental studies course that you should pursue to take if you were to major in environmental studies. Anyway, she came to give a guest lecture in my 201, and she told me and my students that, science-wise, natural science-wise, pretty much all the research has been done. So the future well-being of our planet and the humanity, everything is now resting upon the hands of the humanists. Yeah, so we have to be responsible as a disciple or the scholars of environmental humanities, because this is really, nothing is straightforward, right? There's just so much gray space. But that's how the reality is for us. We are all living, we are all human beings, we're part of the ecosystem. Nothing should be, either this or that. So let's just try to dismantle this neatly compartmentalized binary thinking throughout our learning experience, collaboration in environmental studies. And as John pointed out earlier today, Dr. Peterson pointed out earlier today, what I so appreciate about this program and my colleagues is that environmental studies, right? This is not an environmental science department, but we are an environmental studies department in which each of us faculty members, we cultivate synergistic relationship amongst ourselves, helping out each other. And in so doing, really constructing this creative, productive relationship within ourselves, beyond ourselves, inviting students to join us to dismantle the binary thinking. Yeah. And also collaborating with our community partners, be it our urban community partners, Cleveland community partners, or far away, let's see, Africatown, Alabama, or Ukiaguviko, Alaska, you name it, we are all humans. So let's just stand on the same level and strike out a conversation to hope for a better and more breathable future. So anyway, I'm just so excited. This is a great group of people. So thank you again for inviting me. I haven't even started my actual presentation yet, but I'm just so excited here to be with you tonight. And I really would love to carry on this conversation for the remainder of your student life here at Auburn and beyond. Okay, so where do we stand? I'm gonna try to look for my PowerPoint, so just bear with me. Here we go. Yeah, now you're looking at my PowerPoint number one. Yeah, right. So welcome everyone to my part of the Arctic. That's called Arctic Alaska. And I really hope, I know this is a busy time of the semester. Everybody is getting overwhelmed with the midterm exam and quizzes and paper proposals. It's a tough time, right? And here comes Chia assigning you some over 40-page reading. And I really, I'm so sorry. I should apologize. I normally don't do it, but since this is my first book, I really felt like, oh, this is such a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for me to share with you what I have in mind recently, or over the course of the past 16 years. You're 18, I assume. Some of you might be 17. So you have been spending the majority of your lifetime in Arctic Alaska, working with this group of people, the Inupiat people, who oftentimes refer to themselves as the people of the whales, right? So here is the book. As Professor Peterson has pointed out, you are some of the first readers of this book. So I feel very privileged, and I just want to extend special thank you to everyone who's here with me tonight. I feel extremely honored, and I will be very eager to hear your thoughts on this work. Don't hesitate to be critical. I'd welcome any constructive criticism because we're learning all the time. I just often consider myself as a person who happens to be one of the oldest in the classroom, who's in this privileged situation from teaching, sharing what I know with my students, and also learning from 4 different minds and life experiences and expertise. 40 different brains that carry on toward the future of this nation. So yeah, I feel very privileged and honored. All right, so once again, it's whale snow, Inupiat climate change, and multi-species resilience in Arctic Alaska. Yeah, now that you've read my chapters, I expect you to be able to tell me what multi-species resilience is, but I'm not gonna put anybody on the spot. All right, so let's just move on. So this is the book, and I consider my work as inherently and fundamentally collaborative. That is, the community so generously gave me this role to be a storyteller. But really, all the words and wisdom that I was able to share with you came from the community. So I see them as my co-authors. They're my mentors. And just to clarify, all the profits, the royalties that is accrued from the sale of this publication goes to the Inupiat Heritage, Language, and Culture Commission, which is a nonprofit tribal organization that documents Inupiat history, tradition, culture, and environment. Yeah, so reciprocity, let's let the reciprocity grows. And in terms of collaboration, as you probably noticed, all the illustrations that's accompanied in this publication was done by my collaborator, Inupiaq artist, Nasugurk Rainey Hobson, and 2 other young female artists, Amanda Kalayak and Crystal Martin. So once again, yeah, I benefited so much through this collaboration. Now this piece is the cover of the book that's called X-Ray Whale. Very serene portrayal of this bowhead whale, which is the core of people's survival, both physical and cultural, social, political survival. Everything is intertwined into the well-being of this bowhead whale. And that's why climate change brings such a detrimental problem to the continuity of Inupiaq way of life. Yeah, that's the gist of my book. And then though, the point that I want to mention or highlight in this book is that Inupiat people are not disappearing, despite the fact that they are suffering from the consequences of environmental injustice, but rather they are playing a very positive and forward-looking role in a way to just reinvigorate their cultural practices and cultural identities to positively cope with the environmental issues that's been tormenting them emotionally and physically. So in a way, my work is a story of hope, unlike the stereotypical narrative that Native peoples, they're on the verge of disappearance. Poor backward people, just indigenous peoples, they do still struggle with a variety of stereotypical images. And yet indigenous people are really not that vulnerable because they're very resilient in their thinking. And they're always working toward accomplishing sustainability through their culture, through their intimate relationship with the sacred animal, the bowhead whale. Trigger warning. Yeah, since many of you don't know me yet, my classes, my presentations typically contain several pictures of dead animals. You might see, yeah, something that's often described as too bloody, but you might feel it's a little too brutal. But yeah, okay, if it's emotionally difficult for you, my priority is for you to take care of your emotions. If you have to just turn yourself away from the camera or screen, or if you want to just step out of the room to grab some drinks to calm yourself down, I'm fine. I would like for you to do it. But promise me one thing. Okay, people have to take the lives of animals in the Arctic to sustain their lives. So whenever people kill animals, of course the animals die, but there's the deepest sense of respect and appreciation toward the animal whom they consider giving themselves to the people who deserves the gift. Yeah, so you might see dead animals, but it has nothing to do with trophy hunting or sport hunting, but rather that's a subsistence act that was wrapped around the notion of respect, appreciation, and deep affection, love toward the environment, love toward the bowhead whale and other animals with whom they share their environment together. All right, so that's the trigger warning. All right, so ta-da, I'm a geographer. Here is the map. Yeah, unless I include a map like this at the beginning of my talk, my husband always gives me a hard time that he is going to just take away my PhD in geography. My husband is a geographer and he's really into map making, and me too, but I'm more like a people person, more of a, I love maps, but yeah, definitely. I see the importance. I know where he's coming from, but sometimes I forget to show maps. So anyway, that's why what you're seeing this here. This is what it looks like. Here's Alaska. Here we go. Over here. Yeah, this is Alaska. We all know where that is, right? Yeah, second youngest state of the United States of America. Right? Right, and here we go. This is the northern edge of Alaska. This is what's called the North Slope Borough, Alaska, the community where I work for my research. And I work in two communities, Utqiagvik, that's Barrow. Yeah, colonial name was Barrow, but they recently renamed into the original name, Utqiagvik. That means the place where they hunt the snowy owls. And the other community where I work, Point Hope, Alaska. The introductory chapter already highlighted so much about ethnographic information of these two communities. So I'm not gonna talk too much, but for the interest of reference, Utqiagvik, the northernmost community of the United States, is only 1,000 miles away from the North Pole. Yeah, and Point Hope is only 40 miles away from the border with Russia. I'm not Sarah Palin. You can't see Russia from Point Hope. Oh, you know who that is? That's great. I thought you're too young to know. Okay. Yeah, I'm just so getting anxious about November 3rd. But yeah, let's really not talk about it. We can worry about it, yeah, later. Anyway, so here we go. I don't remember if I included this illustration in your reading or not. Yeah, I didn't. I'm so sorry. This was what's called the frontispiece. Yeah, I have my book here. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah, so it looks like this. If you have a hard copy of the book, here is the title and author name, and it's accompanied by this image right next to it. This part is called frontispiece. For the publication term. I didn't know that term until I get to finish this book. But anyway, now I know. Now you know. And this frontispiece and the cover page was done by the same artist, a good friend of mine, my adoptive sister and collaborator and mentor, Nasugurk Rainey Hobson, who is an Inupiaq environmentalist who is now working on this very exciting project called Gardens in the Arctic. So she's trying to accomplish agriculture in the frozen Arctic soil using the solar energy. Yeah, in greenhouses. It's just exciting project. Anyway, so Rainy she is a hunter. Yeah, she's an environmentalist. She's a traditional knowledge holder. She's also a mother. She wears so many different hats. Yeah, I have nothing over Rainy Hobson. But anyway, so Rainy shared with me this work, which I gladly incorporated into this book. And now that you've finished reading the introductory chapter, you should be able to interpret this piece. Yeah, so here we go. It's not a quiz or anything. I'm going to give you 30 seconds again to absorb this image on your own. Okay, so just try to understand what's happening here, what this image is trying to represent. All right? All right, 30 seconds. Yeah. Okay, time's up. Unmute yourself, people. Jump in. Tell me what you see. What stories does this portrayal tell us? Go ahead.
I kind of got a head start because I was in the ethnobiology class that you were guest lecturing in. So I've seen this picture before, but I noticed that there's a lot of the animals are the Arctic animals, and it's a piece that sort of encompasses the relationship and how everything's sort of tied together. And there's no area that's specifically animals or specifically people. It's all just sort of one combined energy.
Great, Liz, good to see you again. Oh my goodness, I'm just so happy. Okay, that's so great. And obviously you learned so much from my guest lecture in ethnobiology classes. Oh, so a moment like this with student collaborators really empowers me, Liz, and everybody else. My heart is full. So thank you so much for contributing your perspective and understanding of this piece. So Liz is highlighting this multi-species relationship that's portrayed in the single frame, right? Many connections that you see between humans and non-human others and the surrounding environment that's all entrapped in one scene, in the same moment. Great sense of movement too, fluidity of movements, and also energies and passions that exist that go in between people and animals. Interchangeable energy, movement, right? Who else? Emma.
I think something that it took me a second to notice, but it's really beautiful, is that the way that the humans are drawn, not only like are their poses like sort of similar to animals that they're near, but they actually like their arms are shaped similar to the fins and the wings of the animals, and they don't have legs. They're like they go off into tails, and it just sort of like really embodies this like connectedness and this oneness with the animals and the nature. Like there isn't a difference. They're just all part of the same whole.
Great, beautiful. You will make a wonderful anthropologist. Let me just tell you this, Emma. Great observation. So Emma's pointing out the resonance of body shapes or movements that exist between people and animals. And look how people portray. They have human heads, but definitely there's some resonance or echoing between how their body features are portrayed. For example, their hands, they're non-existent, right? They echo with the shapes of the whale or beluga fins. And then no legs, yeah, what does it represent, right? So this is an attempt of Rainy to dismantling the binary thinking, right, between animals and humans. Definitely. Great. So cross species, interspecies resilience, reciprocity, so beautifully and poetically portrayed in this. Okay, anybody else?
Um, I notice the breeze catching the leaves and the flowers, and then the geese. So I feel like I think about seasons changing and like this transition of like climate and temperature and migration of animals. So yeah.
Great, great. Yeah, thank you so much. Is it Adriana?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you so much. Great. So you see the passing of season or cyclical nature that also resonates with the idea of cycle of life between humans and animals, an infinity of the cycle of life. One generation may perish, but meanwhile, a new generation is about to be born. And there's always a strong sense of hope in the cyclical environment. So you see these concentric circles here and there, right? That can be interpreted in many different ways. And Rainey wanted to portray this intentionally this way. People can interpret it as the wave patterns, right? Oceanic currents, cycle of life, snow, weather patterns, you name it. But everything has a beginning, everything has an ending, and then everything starts over. Life goes on, the reality of the Arctic. And once again, it's a dance. Yeah, why don't we point it out? Yeah, so the portrayal of humans and animals, it was Emma. It makes us think of the movement of dancing, music, choreography. So in a way, this is the dance of survival, dance of subsistence, resilience between the people and animals staying together in the environment that has been constantly severely influenced by the effects of global climate change and many other issues that interrupt everybody together. So anyway, we can spend entire class period just interpreting this image, but I really want to share more information with you and have more conversation with you for the remainder of this class. So I'm going to move on, but at any point or moment for the rest of this class, feel free to unmute yourself, jump in. I'm not going to be able to check the text message or chat system here very often because I'm so focused on talking. But if you jump in and tell me something, yeah, we can develop an exciting new dialogue from there too. So just feel free to jump in, right? I want to make this class as interactive as possible. So don't hesitate to do it. Okay, so all right, that was already. So for the next, yeah, I have 40 some images here, which I want to share with you. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to give you 2 seconds per image just to absorb what you see here. And these 40 images are actually used in my book. All of them are used in some part of the book. But if I start talking about them one by one, it's going to take me just entire week to finish. Not going to do it, but rather I want you to grasp the visual impression of each image as much as you can. I know many of you haven't been to Alaska, so the whole thing still may feel a little abstract, but at least it's my hope that through using your visual sense, you could be able to understand a little more about what you read in my writing. All right, so I'll just shut up and start showing you the images that I used in my book, right? This is the first one. You've seen this in your reading. Okay, so that was the 40 some images. I didn't even count, but yeah, based on what I saw in my book, yeah, there must be over 40 images. I was debating how to structure today's class. Okay, we have 40 minutes left, and I thought about, just stop talking here and open up the floor for discussions. And then I feel like, okay, so this is Niz's second time of hearing me speak. And I really made my guest lecture for the ethnobiology conversational, and I did a lecture, and I really want Niz to learn something new here. So probably I can speak, yeah, for the next 20 minutes since we have, 35 minutes. So maybe I'm going to speak for 20 minutes and open up the floor for questions and answers or conversation for the remainder of the time. How's that? People are nodding. Good. Thank you so much, Professor Peterson. I love your endorsement. I really appreciate it. Okay. Yeah, John, though, every time we have a conversation this way, your just guitars are calling me. Just so beautiful in the background. I just have to hear you play. May not be today, but I'm going to make you play at some point. So great. Okay. All right. So here we go. Let's talk about climate change in Arctic Alaska, whales and well-being. So yeah, definitely you already know who I am, but I didn't use this image in the book, but this is one of my favorite images that I've taken in my community in Arctic Alaska. As you can see, there's this giant whale, right, that just gave itself to the people. And you see this group of the Inupiaq kids happily sitting on top of the whale, which died, yeah, of course, for the people. So you see this happiness and excitement coinciding with this death of this giant creature. And the death of the bowhead whale sustains the lives of the community and future of the Inupiaq people. So there's this very beautiful contrast of life and death. Yeah, at the beginning, I was, of course, I'm indigenous. I came from Japan. Whales are always so special to me for my own personal upbringing. But at some point in the past, I was vegetarian, thinking, oh, the meat came from animals. I have no heart to consume them. And then I really, for health reason, I needed to quickly become meat eaters again. But anyway, now I consume meat. And really the way how people, Inupiaq people, interact with wildlife really made me appreciate this relationship between humans and animals at the most fundamental level. It's highly reciprocal and also respectful. People eat the meat because they need it for their survival. And if they harvest, that's the term they use, if they harvest the whale in the most ethical way possible, which means they would never put the meat on the market, but they share the meat and the blubber with the rest of the community. Yeah. And then the spirit of the whale is watching over you, and they would decide to go back to the community. And you should never over harvest the whales. You should just take as much as it's necessary for you. Yeah, so this environmental ethics really was striking to me when I first started working in this community. And I really wanted to know more about the people for this reason. Animals are important. Animals are gods, they're deities. And at the same time, people were encouraged to harvest the gods. You have to ingest the gods or deity, make it part of your body, through which you are becoming the whales yourselves. So in many ways, people don't see this clear-cut boundary that exists between animals and humans. And of course, with this climate change that's going on today, how to retain this relatedness or closeness with whale has been constantly challenged. And how are they trying to cope with it? Let's talk about it. Okay, so we can successfully skip here. Yeah. So I'm just going to give you these bullet points of what's happening in the Arctic in terms of climate change, right? Yeah, we all know this, I hope. Yeah, unreliable sea ice conditions. So people hunt on the sea ice. You might not know what sea ice is, but sea ice, let me just quickly show you what that is. Yeah, it's the ice on the sea. Here we go. That's also known as shore-fast ice. So, of course, people live on the tundra, right? And there's the Arctic Ocean. Yeah, open water. But this open water freezes up solid during winter months. Well, they should be. And that extends all the way to 10 to 10 or 20 miles offshore. And since it's solidly frozen, people can go out there, camp out there on the shore fast ice and harvest this giant creature, bullhead whale, that weighs 1 ton per foot. And they can just 200 people come out on the sea ice, butcher this giant animal that weighs 1 ton per foot, that can grow into 60 feet in adulthood. So that's just 60 tons of weight right there, in addition to 200 people. They can just do the butchering, harvesting, sharing. Everything can be done on the shore fast ice. In the perfect world. But unfortunately, because of climate change, it's getting challenging as I speak, because the sea ice is thinning and oceanic currents are getting more unpredictable. The wind is taking away chunks of the land because of the sea ice retreating much earlier in the season. Sea ice functions as a buffer between the land and open water. But anyway, everything combined, people's life is changing. People's environment is changing very quickly. Okay, here we go. So anyway, mispredictable weather patterns and stronger, more frequent winds, everything's getting more unpredictable, making what's called traditional ecological knowledge less relevant. That results in serious sense of depression among the villagers whose subsistence was reliant upon the vitality of traditional wisdom and knowledge. And this also contributes to, of course, depression contributes to many social ills, including domestic violence, suicide, alcoholism, drug abuse, you name it. So in this time of global climate change, people's physical well-being has been threatened, as well as their cultural well-being and sustainability. And of course, changes in animal populations and migration patterns, it's getting too warm for animals. Think about it. So the bullhead whale, I had that image somewhere, and let's see, here we go. Yeah, cross section of the bullhead whale body. So what you're looking at here is the fat, 30 inches of fat, insulation. The whales traditionally needed this much of insulation to survive the coldest water on the surface of this planet, called the Arctic Ocean. But now the water is warming up. It's getting too hot for the whales. And what do they have to do? They have to deviate from their original migration path, right? So they used to go by the community, whaling community, but now they're taking further northern route to get to their feeding ground near the North Pole, because the further north you go, the colder the water will be, right? It's science. So that's what the whales are doing. But because of this, the distance between the hunting ground, nuclear hunting ground, and the bullhead whale migration path is increasing. It's getting more difficult for the people to access whales. And something similar is happening between people and other Arctic animal species, like caribou, seals, walrus, you name it. Okay, and of course, erosion of homeland, of course, that's a serious problem. People are losing their homeland because the tundra is thawing. And as the tundra thaws, what happens, right? It's emitting more greenhouse gases that's being entrapped under the frozen soil for thousands of years. And also it's nowadays emitting pathogens, toxic pathogens that has been frozen in the ice core for thousands of years. So there was an instance in Russian Arctic 4 years ago, there was an outbreak of anthrax. Yeah, the pathogen or the germs that have been dormant for centuries are now coming back because of the thawing of tundra or the permafrost. So that really presents many dimensions of serious issues to the well-being, social well-being, physical well-being, and cultural sustainability for the indigenous peoples of the Arctic. So what do? I do many things as always, but recently I'm looking into health and well-being among the indigenous people. Inupiaq people and how it's anchored in this traditional act of hunting the whales. And I also try to work with the community to co-produce knowledge, co-production of knowledge, which is called indigenous geography and environmental justice, because indigenous peoples, if you are majoring in anthropology, you should know that they have no faith in academia because they have been traditionally abused by scholars. What's called data mining, knowledge mining. Scholars also oftentimes went into these communities. They collected data and they brought the data back home, completely separating the data and sacred information from their indigenous cultural fabric. And scholars just published them. They didn't care if that was sacred body of knowledge or not. They just published them, got famous and made some money and never paid back to the community. I just wanted to rectify this problematic relationship between indigenous communities and academic institutions like Oberlin College. So I actively solicit student participation in my research. And I brought 3 student collaborators to one of the communities where I work in Arctic Alaska about 3 years ago. Yeah, I'll talk more about it. Yeah, ask me question about this if you're curious. Okay, so anyway, yeah, I see my community. Yeah, I see my community members as my collaborators with whom I cultivate the foundational knowledge for indigenous resilience. And again, everything's intertwined in people's relationship with and love toward this beautiful creature, which I also worship, the giant whale here. Here we go. Yeah, so this is my adoptive family members. I am an adoptive daughter. I'm an adoptive granddaughter, adoptive niece, adoptive auntie. Yeah, I play many different roles in this community, which I really hardly appreciate. It's a good step forward to reciprocate with the community. So good news is I know how to butcher the bowhead whale. Let me know if you harvested a whale. I'll come over and help you. Okay, so here we go. You don't have to know this. So this is what it looks like, traditional whaling scene. So you see 2 tiny whaling boats, right? These are called umiaks. Yeah, it can, each vessel can hold up to 6 whalers. Most of them are male, but nowadays they have female whalers too, who use these paddle boats. Yeah, and they use 6 seal skins to make the covering of this boat wrapped around the wooden frame. And of course, sometimes people have to use aluminum boat to deal with environmental changes because of climate change. But anyway, people still prefer to use these traditional boats because it's covered by the seal oil. I mean, seal skins, which is very greasy, very oily. Think about placing something that's coated by oil on top of water surface. It floats, right? And good news is it doesn't make any sound. So if you approach these big whales using these tiny boats, whales can't hear you. Yeah, so that allows you to quickly and safely approach these giant creatures and successfully harvest them with respect. So this is how you saw this Inupiaq whaling cycle. This is Inupiaq calendar that's intertwined with people's relationship with whales, both spiritual and physical level. And people say that, it's a cycle of life. You can't skip even one thing here. In other words, think about it. So the spring whaling and fall whaling here, yeah, 2 times for you to whale if you live in Utqiagvik. Just once if you lived in Point Hope. What if you couldn't hunt any whales one year? None of the above is possible to accomplish. So your culture dies. It falls apart. Yeah, that's what people say. So that's why climate change presents such a severe problem for the people that I work with. And yeah, I think I talked about this in introduction, so I can just quickly go over this. But so the bowhead whale and well-being, they're deeply intersected, not pun intended. Well, I originally meant pun intended, but really, in reality, whales and well-being, they're inseparable for people's survival. Oh, and here, my friend Amanda Kalayak gave me this illustration that portrays how everything that enables people's survival exists within this existence of the bowhead whale. So here we go, Atauchmuka, that means let us unite as one. Everything is enabled by our relationship with the bowhead whales. And here, it's quote, and without the bowhead whales, we're not here. Yeah. And you might be wondering, one thing I ask you to pay attention to is the coexistence between modern technology and traditional hunting style. Some of you might have felt it's contradictory, but for Inupiat people, they coexist. Yeah. And here's a quote that I want to share with you. Where did my book go? Here we go. So in my first year, I was really shocked to see, this coexistence of, look at this, modern technology. Where did it go? No, there was a front end loader. Oh yeah, that was earlier. I'm sorry. Here we go. Yeah, it was somewhere. So I saw this very traditional whale harvest, right? And the next thing I saw was that there was this huge front end loader coming out to pick up, here we go, pick up the whale, 2 of them. I'm like, is this really traditional? What? Is this still called traditional whaling? And my adoptive father said, he asked me, so Chia, tell me what tradition is. And it was, again, I got confused. I was a really naive Japanese woman who was just recently adopted by this community. And then my adoptive father, I guess I gave you this preface. Yeah, so you probably remember this, but and then Roy, my adoptive father, continued, our tradition is to use the best tool available in our time. That really shows the flexibility and elasticity of the mindset, which successfully enables people to survive the crisis like the pandemic or the global climate change that they're confronting today. They're not hesitant about changing their culture. And as a scholar of cultural studies, I can't emphasize enough that the culture that stopped changing is a dead culture. Culture is always changing, and that allows us to survive. And something similar, something same should be applied to Inupiaq way of life, Inupiaq reality that's supported by both tradition and modernity. But oftentimes anthropologists have a tendency to think, oh, they're no longer authentic because, they are now using this outside equipment. They're reliant upon technology. What? They're on Facebook? They're really not Eskimo anymore. This approach is definitely wrong. And I see that Oberlin students are really good at picking up this from reading and also hearing what Inupiaq people are talking about today, how they balance their world through the active incorporation of technology, outside Western technology, and sometimes faith, which allows their survival possible. So it's this flexibility of the mindset, elasticity of their spirituality and everyday life that makes them strong. Here we go. So where are we? Yeah, so that's why you see, here we go. Yeah, you see these snow machines, what they call snow machines, snowmobiles. You see them often, and you might have been surprised. What happened to the dogs? There are dogs, but they became pets. Yeah, there is one dog team in this community, Utgeagvik, and it's an active team. And yet people know, the sea ice may break any moment. And if you have 40 dogs to herd as the ice breaks out, as you collect all the hunting equipment and just evacuate yourself, you're not gonna make it. But rather, if you have these gasoline-operated snowmobiles, your chances will increase to survive the catastrophe. So this is a bare necessity for the people. Yeah, and of course, bowhead whales are very important for people's survival. This is what's called food sovereignty, right? You are what you eat. And this is a very cold climate, as you can imagine. The temperature gets down to 40 below Fahrenheit pretty often, even now with the environment warming up. And people have to eat wild meat to survive. And they can't cultivate vegetables. Yeah, Rainy is trying to do it. But in a traditional, historical sense, people have never been able to cultivate vegetables. and their bodies are craving for vitamins as much as our bodies are. Without vitamins, they would die of scurvy, cardiovascular diseases, and many other issues will crop up. And how do they prevent them from happening, right? They have to eat wild meat and wild blubber. Bullhead whale blubber provides the omega-3 fatty acids. Those are good fat and vitamins such as A and C and other goodies that are central for sustaining your physical and spiritual well-being. Yeah, an impact of climate change, though, is giving them a hard time, and bullhead whales are swimming away from their community. Sea ice is thinning. Every year, there is at least one incident in which the ice breaks up as the people try to haul up the whale upon the sea ice. The environment is getting very unpredictable, life-threatening as well. Yeah, so let's see. Yeah, right. So this photo is just from this past year, 2019. An image that was taken off the coast of Point Barrow by my research community. Yeah, but you wouldn't even notice this was taken in the Arctic without this label, right? You might think, oh, nice, Great Lakes, Lake Erie, or Pacific, California. You can't imagine this was in the Arctic this late in the year, October 7th. And then let's go back in time for some 3 decades before that. Yeah, so the sea ice formed very quickly, and that entrapped 3 whales, the same spot. Yeah, same place, same time of year. So you can imagine how quickly the environment is shifting within a matter of decades, few decades. And then, of course, erosion is a serious problem for research communities. Yeah, Professor Peterson shared with you one of my old articles as optional reading for today. Yeah, if you're curious, take a look at it. The chapter is called Our Home is Drowning. It's about this community called Point Hope that had gone through this relocation of the settlement in the 70s because of the severe erosion. And now it's just a matter of time for them to lose their new settlement because the sea is encroaching to the land as I speak. And now more than 90% of the original homeland is underwater. So it is a real problem. And this is my colleague, yeah, Dr. Rosemary Atwangarak, who received an honorary doctorate from Oberlin College in 2017. She also works with Jay Fiskio and Amy Margaris in anthropology, so she might look familiar to you. She actually comes here once a year. Yeah, she couldn't come because of COVID this year so far, but yeah, normally she comes here once a year. So you get to meet her as soon as the COVID storm is under control. Anyway, Dr. Atwangarak she's an advocate of indigenous human rights and in global indigenous health. And she is from a small community called Nuiqsut, which is right here on this map, which is part of this Beaufort Sea lease area for Alaska oil and gas region, which is surrounded by many polluting facilities like this. And now with this climate change, what's happening is that the Arctic Ocean is getting ice-free. Yeah, it's more accessible for extractive industry to come in to explore oil and gas. And now there's a strong correlation between the rate of cancer and respiratory disease going up, and also the continuous arrival of extractive industry in the Arctic Ocean. So it presents a very serious health concerns. And of course, as many of you already have realized, mental health, this is an ongoing issue in indigenous communities, especially in this time of global climate change. And it has to do with intergenerational trauma that started with a history of colonialism, imperialism in the indigenous soil. This is what's called soul wounds. Your soul is falling apart. It was so tormented over the course of the centuries. It ended up becoming what's called intergenerational trauma. So you yourself have no experience of attending the boarding school, which is administered by Christian missionaries. But your grandparents, let's say, they attended this boarding school. the trauma actually transcends generations and it affects your personal well-being as well. Anyway, if you want to hear more about this, take one of my courses, especially the upcoming one in the spring, Global Indigenous Health, which I will talk so much about this. Anyway, so domestic violence, alcoholism, all the social issues, they're entangled with the encroachment of of extractive industry and also global climate change. But everything is intertwined. And then though, Inupiaq people, yeah, they're staying strong. They're trying to actively cope with this crisis through what's called collaborative reciprocity and cultural resilience. Right, so okay, it's an important image. Tundra is thawing, but anyway, let me just go on. Cultural resilience and well-being. That's people. What do they do, right? Yeah, environment is changing. Whales are swimming away from the people, but now people are reversing their way of thinking. That is, in the past, people needed to people couldn't perform any music. People couldn't perform anything ceremonial if they couldn't hunt any whales, because the understanding is that you really upset the spirit of the whale. So you should refrain yourself from any kind of celebration. But now they know they didn't do anything wrong to the whales, but whales are going away from the people. And they're actively performing music, they're actively reinvigorating their cultural identity to re-establish their relationship with the bowhead whales through the power of their culture, through the elasticity of their mindset. So that's what I mean by cultural resilience. So now the harvest level is going down, but actually cultural vibrancy is going up in the hope that they would be able to retain their relationship, kinship with the bowhead whales. And this really works in their favor in a way to regain their health, physical and spiritual health. And here are two of my collaborators, ethnomusicologists, talking about what's happening in the Arctic. So put simply, Aaron Fox, ethnomusicologist from Columbia's Center for Ethnomusicology, put simply, young people who dance are less likely to die. He's referring to self-inflicted death because so many commit suicide. Yeah, but dancing changes everything. Dancing really matters for community health. Dancing saves lives. That puts everybody together, and at the same time allows people pay respect to the bowhead whales. And Maria Williams, she is a Tlingit Indian and scholar of ethnomusicology. She says, to dance is to be. Dancing is a backbone of personal and community integrity. That's absolutely right. And that's what we are witnessing today. And also, Inupiaq people have become politically active too, to get their own voices heard by adopting vocabulary of Western science, if necessary. It doesn't mean the death of traditional ecological knowledge, but it means this adept synthesis that they have learned to create through the incorporation of Western science within their vocabulary. Yeah, to convince scientific world outside of the North, right? So they are part of the International Whaling Commission. The headquarters is located in Cambridge, England. Anyway, so AWC is the indigenous-driven organization advocating for the rights of whaling. And where are we going from here, right? Inupiaq people are so excited about this emerging collaboration and relationship with Oberlin College, partly because they see me as their own. They feel, and I agree with them, that they raised me. I wrote in this book that Inupiaq means the real person or the real people. Before entering this community, people say I wasn't Inupiaq, I wasn't the real person. And to this, I agree. I agree, they really helped me grow up as a person, as an individual, as much as a scholar. So last time when I went back to the community with my students, they were just so delighted to see me with my students because they actually see that they educated me right in the Inupiaq way, so I could reciprocate. And I could pay back to the community by educating the future of the United States through sharing what I learned in the community. And this way, the future scholars from an institution like Oberlin will be able to construct more healthy and reciprocal relationship with the indigenous communities that have been historically marginalized. Yeah. So yeah, this is what I try to accomplish. I've been designing this medium-term research project called Global Indigenous Research Alliance, bringing in a variety of experiences and indigenous voices with climate change from Native North America, Inupiaq people, let's see, Lenape people of Pennsylvania, Haudenosaunee of upstate New York, and Kanaka Maoli of Hawaii. And I'm also having conversation with my counterpart in Japan, indigenous groups of Japan, Ainu and Okinawan people. So we can collectively bring the voices of underrepresented and underserved community together to seek out a more hopeful and viable future together. So if you're interested in learning more about this project, definitely consider taking one of my classes in the future. I teach a variety of courses in environmental studies, and now I realize we only have 6 minutes left. Yeah, too much excitement. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. Here we go. So I can see everybody. Well, not everybody fits in, but I could still see you. Okay, so go ahead. Ask me any questions, people. Let's have a conversation.
I had a question about the reading. It came up around early pages of the reading. You described storytelling as inherently anthropogenic. I was wondering if that's in the sense that storytelling is inherently destructive towards nature, or storytelling is, did you mean anthropogenic in the sense that it's just related to humans? Because I thought that was very thought-provoking, that even storytelling may be a form of depletion of nature.
Yeah, so storytelling is inherently anthropogenic. Yeah, right. This means that, so storytellers tends to be humans, right? Inupiaq people say animals tell their own stories, but at the level of my writing, I'm focusing on Inupiaq people. So we are reliant upon the words pronounced and produced by the Inupiaq storyteller. So the agents, the power really lies in the speech of the Inupiaq people. And what do they do with the power of words? They embrace what surrounds them through this intimate web of reciprocity. So in this sense, there's no sense of hierarchy, although the act of storytelling is really definitely anthropogenic in this sense. Yeah, that's a great question, Noel. Thank you. I love storytelling. I definitely grew up in that tradition. Yeah, Emma?
I was just wondering, since your book is obviously so recently published, what sort of direction your future work with this community is like looking like it's gonna take?
That's really good. And I have to mention one thing. I love your cat in the back. That's so great. Yeah, multi-species,
enjoy reading.
resilience, kinship, relationship right there. So anyway, let me get back to your question. Yeah, where do I envision myself with this community? Let's say 5 years down the road, right? Yeah, it's like an interview question. I should be prepared. No, I don't know, Emma, to be honest. I originally had a clear agenda in mind. So this GIRA project, Global Indigenous Research Alliance, definitely is there. I'm still designing it, developing it in consultation with my indigenous collaborators. But now everything has changed since the beginning of this year, right? Because of the pandemic. It is definitely severely affecting the social fabric and physical well-being of the Inupiaq people in many ways that was never even anticipated before. So for now, yeah, I'm hoping I could contribute to the tribal initiative of pursuing tribal health for this coming 2 years or so. I don't know what exactly it takes, but from my perspective, I could work with elders using Zoom or Skype or you name it, and collect oral history stories, stories that would create oral history database. For example, so Alaska Native communities, they have this very difficult past of losing many community members because of epidemics, numerous epidemics that were brought upon them at the beginning of the 20th century. So the influenza was one, diphtheria, there are several other crises that people have confronted in the past, which many of them survived successfully. And my research could focus on something like, so how did they survive? What the society, what did it look like during this crisis? And what are the lessons that we can learn from them? And how can we deliver this information for the future generation? So there's so much consultation that have to be done, but I see there's room for me to be able to contribute to the initiative.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So there's in the Nuka culture, there's the subsistence culture where death is as sacred as life, and it's not viewed as something negative. And it was seen the butchering of the Bahadur whales was portrayed as the whale giving themselves to whomever is worthy reciprocation. But I was wondering, in a sense where if it's reciprocating, is there any sense? Do you think that there's any sense where the humans are giving themselves to the whales, where they are also returning themselves to dust, to nature?
So okay, let me try to phrase your question to see if I really understand your question. So your question is, so whales give themselves to the people, and people give themselves to the whales?
Essentially. So I had like the assumption that in this culture there is no hierarchy between it's not humans above whales. It's they're the same. So I was wondering how do the Nuka people equal themselves to them? Like, do they since whales
I think I got you. Yeah, I think I got you, Noel. Yeah, how do they reciprocate? Yeah, that's so Inupiat people, of course, they don't waste anything that comes out of the body of the whale, and they utilize every single thing. That includes the bones and stomach lining. Everything can be used towards something. Let's say stomach lining is preserved and turned into the drums that they use for ceremonies. And bones are used for some ceremonies or contributing to some architecture, construction. And let's see what else. They never over harvest. That's one thing. Huge piece of environmental ethics. And people perform for the spirit of the whales. And they sing for the spirit of the whales. So it's highly symbolic, and yet to Inupiat people that constitutes their reality, that supports their environmental ethics. Never over harvest whales, never harvest a baby whale, for example, never harvest a female whale that looks pregnant, never harvest a mother whale that has a baby calf swimming by it. So all kinds of there are details associated with this. And after you die, after people die in the Arctic, they are buried in the cemetery that's surrounded by the whale bones. So after death, you go to the other side of the world to be with the spirit of the whales. And if you die during hunt, that's badge of honor. Definitely can happen. Can happen, but you died for the whales, you died for the community, and everybody will honor you in your family for many years to come. Yeah, so it's after time. So let me turn this over to Professor Peterson.
Yeah, all I want to say is a word of appreciation for sharing with us this evening. I always appreciate your coming into class. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It was so nice to meet everyone. I hope to see you, every single one of you, in the near future in one of my classes or somewhere else. Just say hi whenever you see me around.
Thank you.
Hi, good night. Stay safe. Bye, John.
Yeah.
John, I have a quick question. I just realized.
Sure.
In the Community Voices project with the student, I recorded 6 questions. Recorded 6 questions, but it still says there's still 3 slots for questions. I was wondering, are we only supposed
that's
to mark
fine.
3 questions? I mean, transcribe 3 questions, or do we need to put more?
You already did your interview and you're saying you asked 3 questions,
Oh, I asked
yes?
6 questions, but how many do
You
I need
asked
to
6.
transcribe?
I think you should really base it on content, and I would only I would transcribe the best content.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, what is best. So I wouldn't do it by sort of order, like which one's got what got the most interesting responses that are likely to produce the best content. I think that's what you should ask yourself, and just don't bother with the rest of it. So, you know.
Okay, thank you.
Does that sound
Thank you for
good?
this class.
Okay. That was
Yeah.
fun, huh?
It was. You too.
Take care.